And we are here with New Jersey State Climatologist Dr. Dave Robinson. We're going to recap everything in the month of September. We were talking offline. We said, there's just not like a lot to talk about in September, but we're still going to find a way to fill up a half hour because that's just what we do when we start talking.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hopefully it's not too boring for everybody. I don't think it will be. I think we'll be good. You are back from the Arctic Circle ish in Greenland. Listen, I mean, I like my warmth. I don't know, to sacrifice, that time of year to be up there might hurt me a little bit, but you are the snow king. I'm sure you were in your element. And we could talk about it for a half hour, but generally Greenland, thumbs up. We like Greenland.
Huge thumbs up. We were
Okay.
very fortunate to spend the first half of September on the west coast of Greenland. Some beautiful sights, kayaking amongst icebergs, getting up onto the ice sheet with a colleague at Rutgers who studies the plumbing of the Greenland ice sheet. So we got to some places that off the tourist track, just spectacular. Photos don't give you even a full impression of what it's like there. Wonderful people we ran into. Yeah, it's maybe not for everyone. We had to get out the winter clothes and now we've packed them away. But we're talking days in the 30s, a couple frosty mornings with some ice on the puddles, and days around 40, low 40s. We saw a little snow mix in our
Yeah.
first day there with some rain in Nuuk, the capital.
Yeah.
So no, not for everyone, but just a wonderful experience.
It must be interesting though. We did talk about this beforehand. Like it's right, so it feels like January, like a New Jersey January, let's say. But the sun's out for so long, like it must like throw you off because you were saying like it was sunset at 9 p.m. Like if I saw sunset at 9 p.m. or it's twilight at 9 p.m. and it's 32 degrees, my brain I think would just like be in a blender. I think.
Yeah, it was a little strange. We had our winter coats, our puffy jackets on most of the time because there'd be a breeze or maybe it rained a few times. The only time it was really cold was being out on the boat on a cloudy day or amongst the icebergs with some wind blowing and the boat moving along. It was an open boat with a half dozen seats on it, and that was winter. That was winter cold.
Yeah.
But when the sun was out and it wasn't windy, it was, like a nice sunny winter day here in New Jersey. Temperatures in the 30s, low 40s. Yeah, but not for everyone. I get it. And since we've been back the last 2 weeks, they've lost about 10 degrees on the thermometer. So it's in the 20s and 30s now, and they've lost an hour of time
Right.
uh, as they start going down to
Yeah.
no sunrise.
Yeah.
One place we were north of the circle, but we were there just before the autumnal equinox. So it was about 12 hours of daylight. And if anyone knows, in higher latitudes, twilight lasts for a long time because of the way the Earth, the circular shape of the Earth. So it was bright light well into the evening there compared to down here in the mid latitudes.
Yeah, it's interesting because during the summer, we kind of have this in the mornings and in the PMs where actually the sun, at least it's bright at about the same time for a longer period of time because as that sun gets lower, to your point, your twilight's a little bit longer. So especially like I am one to take a pre-dawn walk nowadays. And, even into early August, it's still a little bright at like 5 a.m., let's say. So no, that's awesome. I'm glad, you had a great time. I want to go to Greenland. United has that flight. I will get there one day, but I'm glad you got there. All right, let's turn it back closer to home here in New Jersey. I was thinking about like what should we lead off with the month of September? And I think I want to start with this, in that we had a kind of a topsy-turvy month because the beginning of September was kind of a continuation of August, which was cool. I mean, it felt like maybe something in early October, like we are recording now. But the second half of the month felt like, oh wait, summer's still, around. Like, and I think you did say it to me when we were talking about this. The second half of the month ended up warmer than the first half of the month. So two questions with this. One, where were we exactly? And two, like, do we know how often this happens?
Yeah, that one's tough to get a handle on how often it happens. I've seen it before, but you're absolutely right. The first half of the month, particularly in South Jersey, was about 2.5 degrees warmer the second half of the month than the first half of the month. Up north, the second half was about 1 degree warmer in the second half than the first half. So it was it was a false start to fall, I guess you could call it. And the warmth really regained hold. The last week of September, statewide, ran about 7 degrees above normal. And that really tipped us from a month that was running a little below normal to one that ultimately ended up being a little bit warmer than normal, particularly in the northern half of the state, where it actually tied as the eighth warmest
Hmm.
September on record, going back 131 years in the north. But in the south, it was the 25th warmest, and right along the coast, it was the 28th warmest.
Right.
Any way you look at it, it ended up on the mild side, thanks to that. There was a week earlier in the month that was pretty mild. Once you were 4 or 5 days into the month, and then the last week of the month was, really
Yeah.
unusual.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the fifth and the sixth, where we did see widespread upper to mid 80s, for inland areas and even the coast, plenty warm. And we always say local summer, September. And, we certainly had that, for those days. And it's a good point, too, even though we're about average, the average is 1991 to 2020. So that's how still we end up, I forget exactly what you said, but like the 25th warmest. That's going back to 1895, where we have seen a warming New Jersey, a warming planet. We know that. So that's how we that's maybe those numbers didn't exactly make sense at first, but when you picture the longer concept, that's what we had here. When we look at, especially the coast, I feel like we had a lot of these onshore winds, throughout the month as well, which usually, it still kept it cooler a number of days, but the oceans, we're at our mildest this time of the year.
Yeah, but you're right. The coastal division, which is kind of like the parkway towards the coast, preliminary numbers only has it 0.3 above normal for the month. Still 28th
Yeah.
warmest because, as you said, backing up a second, statewide, I looked at the 16th warmest
Yeah.
statewide, but nine of the top 20 warmest Septembers have all been since 2010. And remember, we have records back to 1895.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just shows you the early fall is getting warmer.
Yeah.
Uh, our summers are extending.
Yeah.
And frankly, as we record this on the 2nd of October, we're going to be saying that a week from now, because as you know, for your
Yeah.
forecast, it's going to get real warm weekend through a good part of next week.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got a couple of really good beach days, coming up. And look, I mean, we can debate about whether climate change is a positive or a negative. But there's no disputing it's happening. And from a strictly shore business perspective, you want those warmer, dry weekends in September and October. I mean, Cape May County is built off of this, and for great reason. You get a weekend like this first weekend in October where you're in the 70s everywhere. You have plenty of sunshine. I mean, people are going to want to come down. I mean, that's just the reality situation.
Yeah, yeah, I think of it kind of like Black Fridays. Oh, people always said the day after Thanksgiving, the retail folks start going into the black
Yeah.
for the season.
Yeah.
And the coastal areas and others rely on this late season warmth in some
Yeah.
respects to really kick them into the positive column. Not that they might be there already, but you graded this summer so poorly for
Oh my God.
for the
Yeah.
Jersey
So
coast that they need this warm fall to make it up.
that is correct. So that's a good thing. I even forgot. I actually should have brought that up a little bit earlier. Yes, my eighth annual shore summer weekend weather report card. Unfortunately, the worst summer grade in the 8 summers I have done this. We did not even get to a 3 on the GPA scale. Now I'll ask you, as a longtime professor and grader of many different things, what would you grade the shore summer weekends? Do you think it was a sub 3 on the GPA scale, a sub 3.0? Or are you
I'm
just
not
trusting me on this one?
I'm known as a tough but fair grader. It was in the B range,
Yeah.
no question. I thought your grading was a little tougher than my grading when I was looking
Oh,
at what's going on.
yeah,
I don't do it as fastidiously as you
that's
do it.
that's a good that's a good D word right there. Assiduous. I've never even heard of that word before. That's a good one.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny because I've had some conversations with some family members over this about maybe weighing the report card, giving more credit towards like after the 4th of July as opposed to before the 4th of July. Because if you look at this summer, really what hampered this was the first 4 weekends of the year. I went C plus Memorial Day weekend and D plus, C plus, D plus. The reality of the situation is we know the shore is not really popping and lively with energy till after Father's Day weekend, which ended up being pretty good. We didn't do worse than a B. So, I've had some thoughts. Can I weigh it differently? Can I maybe make the holiday weekends weigh a little bit more? I'm open to suggestions. So if you want to give me one, that's fine. If anyone listening wants to give me a suggestion, I'm open to it. But as it stands right now, 2.9 GPA, the lowest of the 8 summers.
Well, one thing I value, and any climatologist or scientist would value who does empirical work, observations, is consistency. And that I hold above anything. So you can look at one individual and say, well, they've been consistent, and then you can compare the ups and downs. But if they're just changing their process along the way, it makes it difficult to determine whether there's been a real change or any.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because my thought was exactly what you're saying, which is like I'm gonna have to go back and regrade all of these if I end up making a
That's
change.
right.
And I don't know if I want to do that. I may have to hire an intern. Maybe an intern can do that for me. So we'll see. All right. Well, see, like we said, we knew we were going to fill up a half hour. We're already at the halfway point here, so we're going to take a break. We'll be back on the other side. We'll talk plenty more about the month of September here on the monthly Weather Roundup. From college essays to graduate statements to career transitions, Jennifer Ansbach Coaching helps every learner take the next step with confidence. Whether you're a high school senior preparing for college, a graduate school applicant, or returning to school after time away, your words can open doors. Write, revise, rise. Visit JenniferAnsbach.com to get started. That's Jennifer, ANSBACH.com. And we are back with our monthly weather roundup. And as you probably just heard, the monthly weather roundup is now sponsored. A big thank you to Jennifer Ansbach Coaching. Jen Ansbach, a Rutgers grad, by the way, and a football season ticket holder. So today's monthly weather roundup is sponsored by Jennifer Ansbach Coaching, helping students and adult learners. You can write, revise, and rise, all with Jen. Learn more at JenniferAnsbach.com. So if you're in college, you're in grad school, or you're trying to return back to school, you need help with those papers, she is your person. And like I said, she's a Rutgers person. I'm a Rutgers person. Dr. Robinson, not a Rutgers grad, but a Rutgers legend in his own right, being at Rutgers for so long. So I think we will, I give a thumbs up to Jen. All right. So let's get back into it. We'll talk about precipitation for the month here. Last year, just to remind everybody, the end of the month was when we started this record long dry streak. We were pretty much dry all October long. Not as significant on the dry side this past September.
No, but we have to remember last September was huge, but then it got dwarfed by October. Last September was the third driest September on record, but then along came October with 2/100ths of an inch for the state and was the driest of any month of any year back to 1895. It was just a total almost shutout. So we were getting into bad straits at this time last year. But it's interesting. We looked at some numbers from June 1st to September 30th last year and this year, and both years had exactly the same amount of precipitation from June 1st to September 30th to the 100th of an inch. Just one of these quirky things. But we have a real mixed bag in September. The coastal areas had some heavy rain, particularly down in Atlantic County, Southern Ocean County towards the end of the month, a real deluge. It was getting dry in Cape May County, particularly the lower half, and then they had some goodly rains this month. Meanwhile, up in the northern part of the state, it was quite dry. Throw my glasses on. For instance, coastal Jersey averaged 3.98 inches of rain in September. That's 9 hundredths above normal. It's essentially very close to the normal. Meanwhile, up north in the northern part of the state, 2.53 inches of rain was almost 2 inches below normal. Now, none of these are close to records from the high or low or whatever end, but it just shows you it was a very diverse month in terms of precipitation, whereas South Jersey and coastal did okay, and Central and North Jersey, not so much. And all of this culminating in just on the beginning yesterday, the 1st of October, New Jersey going into a drought watch from stem to stern. And let me explain that for a second. The south part of the state has been in a drought watch all summer, all the way back to last fall. And that's due to the very, very slow recharge of groundwater, which is so important for water resources in South Jersey. It's just going back a couple of years now. We just haven't had ample enough rain. So they're in a drought watch, not because of low rainfall, but because of the groundwater recharging. Meanwhile, once you're north of 195 in particular, maybe even the AC Expressway, it's been more a matter of lower rainfall of late in September and also in August. And there the concerns are turning to surface reservoir levels, which are some cases are up to 10% below normal. Others are just going down at too fast a pace, but still kind of close to normal. So it's just a drought watch. It's a heads up. Let's hope it doesn't get
Yep.
worse. We sure don't want a repeat of last October. Um, but we could be better. We could be better off right now statewide when it comes to precip.
And the good news is, as we're going into October, our water usage drops as well. So we're not pulling as much water out of the reservoirs, or in the case of Southern New Jersey, out of the aquifers, the Kirkwood Cohansey aquifer that we have there, as well. When we take a look at drought too, we've kind of said this before in other months. Sometimes this is a years long thing, right? And maybe you don't even realize it sometimes till you're out of it. So is it fair to say that, kind of what we're seeing now is part of, a longer period of just drier conditions?
That's a great point. I did look back at the last 12 months in New Jersey. And if the last 12 months of precipitation totaled in New Jersey was compared to calendar years, the last 12 months ending in September 30th would have been the 11th driest on record. Now, there's a cop out. I haven't had a chance to look. We keep a running 12-month means of precipitation. Every month we look at the last 12 and then the last 12. I only quickly was able to compare it with calendar years because I have that list readily available. Matt Gerbich, the assistant SC, he has the spreadsheet that has the 12-month running means. So it's not the 11th driest 12-month period. It's probably in the top 30 or 40, though. And
Okay.
we've had hundreds of them when you look back to 1895. So, yeah, that's an interesting. In the last 13 months, only two have been above normal statewide. People can.
Oh, hold on. Wait, can I guess? Can I guess?
That's why I didn't give it right away.
Is it May?
It was May,
May. Hold on. And then December.
July.
Oh, okay. July.
May and July. May was well above normal. May was a drought buster. Thank goodness for May.
Yeah, May. I remember May was hard to forget. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Our birthday month, by
July,
the way, we should add.
July came a little bit above normal. So
Okay.
that shows you, and that's why your question was a great one, that this really goes back, South Jersey goes back to July, August of 2024. North Jersey, it really August last year was wet. It really goes back to September of 2024. So this isn't a Johnny come lately. And we talked about this last spring was, are we out of the drought or just taking a respite?
Yeah. Yeah.
And one could say we've still been in drought-like conditions for the last 13 to 15 months. It's just had some ebbs and flows to it
Yeah.
along the way.
Hmm. Okay. And, this time of the year, right? September, October, late August. So we do get a good amount of rain from tropical systems, and that's something we haven't had this year, right? I mean,
2 years, really.
yeah, right. Oh, definitely last year, but we haven't really had this year yet. We'll transition into hurricane season here with this. We've had, you said it before while we were off the air, but we had a number of fish storms, but we haven't had any that have made, I don't want to say direct landfall because that doesn't happen every year, but those indirect impacts, where a storm might come up into the Gulf Coast and then we get rain from it, or it's coming through the Carolinas, we get rain. We just haven't seen that this year in New Jersey.
We have, yeah, we really have not, and even in the southeastern U.S., they rely on that as well. They've had some from an earlier tropical system, earlier. I can't remember the name, and maybe it was in August, but we haven't gotten it up here. And by fish storms, we should say these are storms that fortunately never make landfall.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
3 of them were major hurricanes at one point, and one was a modest hurricane. And they've given the coast a pounding. And people this week saw 6 houses on Hatteras Island go into the
Yeah, yeah,
water off in North Carolina. But the waves here have just constantly eaten away the beach. And, as we finish up this segment, this concerns me that we've lost that beach defense system, if you will, for coastal storms come winter. The sands have been eaten away up to the dune line in some points. So we don't have that defense when the first coastal storms of the winter come along, because the tropical season has done such a pounding on the beaches.
yeah. My weather dad, along with you, Jim Eberwine, he actually said this. He said, 2025 is the first Atlantic hurricane season since 1945, where the first 3 hurricanes of the season were all major hurricanes, which was pretty interesting. So we've had powerful systems, but they just haven't really made landfall. And this kind of goes in. I think we've talked about it on this show. I've talked about it when I do public talks. Like, a hurricane forecast in and of itself doesn't really mean much because you could have something where it doesn't impact anybody. And it's just out in the open Atlantic. It only takes one for it to be an active season, near you.
Yep. And we know it can extend through October.
Yeah.
San
Yes.
was October 29th. Now
Yeah.
that was the S storm. And right now we're October 2nd. We're only at the I storm in a season that was supposed to have close to 20 in some of the projections of
Yeah.
tropical and hurricanes. This has been an underperforming season
Yeah.
so far. And that's
Right.
where your point is very germane.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as we were talking about Sandy too in one of our title flooding talks, which you've been a guest on, but we said this will be an upcoming episode. But when it comes to Sandy, right, and we'll end on this, we'll reflect on Sandy 13 years ago. I would venture to say most people who live at the shore, have a second home at the shore now, weren't there 13 years ago. I mean, it's starting to be a long time. A lot of shore towns have pretty quick turnover, a lot of times less than 10 years. But also, too, if you're under 20 years old, you don't really have much of a recollection of it. And I would even probably say if you were maybe 20, even 25, unless you liked weather, had some kind of interest, you were 11, 12. I mean, you didn't have strong memories to it. So like, this is the way life goes, things get in the past. But it just, I don't know. I feel like, to me, I don't know why, but like this year feels like Sandy's starting to be like history, rather than something that's a vivid memory.
We should
Do you
talk
feel the
about that
same way?
Not as much,
Oh,
because Sandy was so transformative, so major. And let's put it in context with Katrina, which just had its 20th
Yeah.
anniversary. It's still very fresh out there. Sandy, not as much. And while a deadly storm, I guess nationally, it had about as many deaths as, say, Helene last year.
Yeah.
Katrina had more. I'm not trying to compare Sandy with Katrina in terms of the death toll and the number of people permanently displaced. And so please don't take it as that. But these are such major events that it does take a little longer to fade from the
Yeah.
mindset.
And
So,
I don't like I agree with you, but I guess what I really should say is there are less people now who have direct experience with Sandy, right? Because like
absolutely.
I did a talk in Avalon last week and I asked how many people we had it wasn't a big crowd, but we had, a couple dozen people. I said, how many people had a house or lived, or full time during Sandy? And I would say 15% of them raised their hand.
Mhm.
That's a low number, right? I mean, but connecting the dots, like, yeah, it's 13 years ago. If you're in a beach town, many of our beach communities have a number of people who worked hard all their life and now they're retired here. And they might have moved on, or maybe they went even further south of Florida or something. I'm not saying like collectively as a mindset, we've forgotten about it, but the direct experience with Sandy, just gets less and less, as we go forward in time.
Oh, absolutely, without question. And I'm not advocating for storms to come along frequently enough to keep us.
No. Yeah.
But look at the flooding, inland flooding events. Floyd in 99, Irene in 2011, Ida in 2021. These have kept that fresh in people's minds. Sandy, it was a matter of power failures inland, trees down, and the winds, not nearly as impactful in a long-term sense as the people who suffered along the coast. But Sandy was such a massive event that it's a little slower to fade than
Yeah.
any other.
Yeah. Agree with you
Well,
100%.
yeah, people have to we have to keep people's aware of these episodes from the past
Yeah.
and make them aware that they could very readily happen again
Yeah.
and are likely to happen again at some point, and we have
Yeah.
to be prepared for that.
Yeah. Hopefully not for a long time. Hopefully not for a long time.
I know.
Fingers crossed. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up. We filled a half hour with no issue, as I thought. So great job to all of us. Tell us where we can find more about the work at the state climate office, and we'll wrap it on up.
Just go njclimate.org, and that will even link you to our weather network at njweather.org, where you can keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on. And finishing up with up in Walpack, a valley in Northwest Jersey, here we are the 2nd of October. They hit 31 degrees this morning with a heavy frost. Meanwhile, it was all of 62 degrees for a low down at Harvey Cedars. So that's Jersey. That's why we love it, from coast to the highlands.
Yeah. Shout out to Harvey Cedars Police Chief Robert Burniford. I had coffee with him last week in Harvey Cedars. That Park temperature, though, making me think of Greenland. A little too early for that for my blood, but you already experienced that. So 31's nothing. Yeah, it's fine. All right. We will be back with you at the beginning of next month to recap the month of October. For Dr. Dave Robinson, I'm Joe Martucci. Thanks for listening to the monthly weather roundup brought to you by Jennifer Ansbach Coaching. We'll see you next time.